Let's have a chat about embroidery machine tension settings. Welcome to the Sewing Report. I'm Jen. This channel is all about making sewing fun and approachable. And I ran into a bit of frustration actually, and I wanted to share some things with you about embroidery machine and the importance of your tension. So I've been testing out this new font and it's a little bit different. It's a Fringe font, so it relies on actually cutting the back of the bobbin thread and then kind of fluffing it out to make fringe. But I ran into some issues, but also I discovered some things. I'm doing a bee monogram and I was planning to do it to some towels and whatnot. So first, I actually started off on my other machine, the Brother Skitch, and I have some footage of me stitching out some samples. So I ended up stitching out some samples late into the night, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a lot. First, I started on the Skitch, and then I also stitched out some samples on the Brother PE900, which is the machine you see here. You can change the upper thread tension, and that actually really matters for basically how much bobbin thread you see on the back. And on this machine here, you can actually change the tension on your design you're going to stitch out. So you can see here there's a little, it's like a little thread chain with some scissors. That's how you can change the tension. You can also change the end color trim, cutting off, and the jump stitch trim. But here is your tension. So the default is 4.0. Normally, I actually just leave it there and kind of set it and forget it. Doesn't seem to make too much of a difference, and it tends to look the same on the right side of the fabric, which is really generally what matters. Now, you can lower this all the way to 0. So 0 is very, very loose tension on your upper thread. You can also raise this. I was trying to see how high it could go, and it can go up to 9.0. So I decided to go for all the extremes. So on this machine, I stitched out the same thing, the letter B, and I did a few different tension settings. And I also did the same thing on the Skitch machine. All right, I'm going to put this back on 4. And normally it doesn't really matter too much, as long as your bobbin thread isn't showing on the top side, which is an issue I see a lot of people running into. So first I started off stitching this design on the Skitch. So you can see here are some of my samples here. And you can see they pretty much look the same on the right side of the fabric. So this is the first one I did. And also save these test samples in case you need them, just for like a visual reminder. If you ever need, you're like, okay, well, what does it look like with, default tension? I've marked it. I used a Sharpie and I cut these out. I don't know how long I'll hold on to these, but long enough so that I can use them as a reference. So this is the same design, which is this B monogram. And you can see on the front, so this is tight tension. So that is like the most tension you can get. And the tension settings are different on the Skitch. It's just a dial. You can't really fine tune it as much. There's no numbers. And then this is super loose tension. But here, I'm going to flip these over and you'll see on the back, these look a lot different. So here's the default tension. So you can see a little bit of the white bobbin thread underneath. This is super tight tension. So here you can see a little bit more bobbin thread. And then super loose tension, basically you get hardly any or no bobbin thread showing. So this is the difference here, and I'll put these in the order. Okay, so you can see loose tension, basically no bobbin thread. Default tension, a little bit of bobbin thread, and then tight tension, you can see the most bobbin thread on the underside. And there's this thing called the rule of thirds, or the 1/3 rule, where apparently ideally you want to have on this back column here, ideally you want 1/3 of this to be the bobbin thread and then 1/3 on either side to be your upper thread. And I guess that's pretty ideal. But you can see on here, even on the tightest tension possible on the Skitch, there's still not a ton of bobbin, like this still isn't even really like 1/3. The thing that was kind of driving me crazy is that for this particular embroidery font, you're supposed to cut the bobbin thread on the underside and then fluff out the top thread for some fringe. I'm not sure if this is going to work though, because you can see in many parts I really have to cut through the upper thread because there's not enough bobbin thread showing for me to cut that part. I'm not really sure how this is gonna turn out, to be honest with you. So I was like, okay, well, this is the tightest I can go with the tension. Like this part here, I should be able to cut it, but yeah, on some of these other parts, I'm gonna have to cut through my yellow thread. Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna turn out. I started going down this rabbit hole. So then I decided to see, I switched machines and I went over to the Brother PE 900 and I was like, well, maybe on the 900, if I tighten the tension, dial it all the way up, maybe I'll get more bobbin thread and then I will be able to properly execute this design. So I ended up stitching out the same thing 3 times, different thread colors, and then I switched the tension. So let me take this off the machine here and I'll show you my results for the PE 900. And I was a little bit disappointed because kind of ran into the same thing. So you can see on the front here, pretty much looks the same. So there's really not much of a difference between, like they all look fairly identical. This is my tightest tension one though, and you can see there's a little bit of puckering. This is default, pretty uniform, and then the loose tension also looks the same. They look pretty much the same, right? Wait till we get to the back because this is where you will see a stark contrast. So let's turn this around. So I've labeled each one so you can see the difference. So this was like no tension. So this was 0. And you can see there's no bobbin thread showing on the underside. Default, this is actually still, I would say, too loose because you really can't see hardly any of the bobbin thread on this one. The best one was 9.0, but you can see the bobbin thread, the distribution of it's not very uniform. You see what I mean? So that's the issue I ran into is that like this column here, I should be able to, you're supposed to take scissors and then cut through the back here and then flip it over and then pull out the threads to make your fringe font. But you can see I will be able to do this here. On the top of the bee, there's really no bobbin thread for me to cut. It's only upper thread. It gets a little better here. You can see on certain parts, there's still no bobbin thread for me to cut through. I can only really cut through the top color thread. And this is on the tightest tension possible. Now let me get the tight tension sample from the Skitch and I'll show you. Like they're fairly similar. So this is Skitch versus PE 900. There seems to be a bit more variety on like the PE. The PE 900 seems to have greater range in the tension. So you can see this is the tightest tension on the Skitch. Over here on this back column here, there's not as much bobbin thread showing on the underside as there is on the PE 900. So I would say just from my experimentation, the PE 900 seems to have greater range with the tension settings, but even on the tightest setting, I still could not get bobbin thread to show up in places where I need to apparently be cutting. So I thought this was pretty interesting. Here, let me show you the loose tension. We'll take a look at that. Let's compare. So this is the default tension. Actually, the default tension on the Skitch, I would say turned out a little bit better than the default tension on the PE 900. So that's kind of interesting. So default tension on the Skitch, you can see a little bit more bobbin thread on here than on the PE 900 sample. Loose tension, I would say the PE 900 is a little bit more, like you can still see a little bit of bobbin thread on the lowest tension setting on the Skitch than you do on the Brother PE 900. So the PE 900 does seem to clearly have, again, greater extremes in terms of the upper thread tension. I don't know, they're still fairly similar. I'm glad I did this just to see for myself. I cannot believe I spent several hours stitching these out just to show you guys. And I don't even know if this design is really gonna work for what I'm doing it for because, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna work. Let me get these scissors out and we'll start cutting this. How it's supposed to work is you're supposed to cut this underside here and then pull it through to the front. So yeah, you can see I'm trying to cut the bobbin thread. Not even sure where I got this, but I have a rather large needle and I'm gonna try to use this to try to pull the thread to the front. I really liked the idea of this design. Let's see how this turns out. So your guess is as good as mine. And I'll link it, I got it on Etsy saw the samples and I thought it was cute. Okay, this kind of works out. So this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to like fringe it out. And normally, again, I don't usually care that much about the upper thread tension. This is one of the few situations where it actually matters. These are curved bent scissors, and I do sell these in my Etsy shop, sewingreport.etsy.com. If you'd like to pick up a pair, I use these all the time, and they're really great. The only thing is that I'm not getting loops of thread like I hoped. I'm getting like the raw cut edges too. So not sure how this would like wash, if you know what I'm saying. All right, you can kind of get the idea here, but I thought it looked really cute in the photos. I don't know, the reality, not sure if this one's gonna work out. I may have to find a different font for this particular project. I'm doing some towels, but I hope you found this helpful. Check out some of my other videos here about embroidery machines. I've got plenty of them, and I will leave a playlist down below in the description box and also in a pinned comment down below. Anyways, I'm Jen with the Sewing Report. Hope you enjoyed this. I will see you again in the next one. And remember, whatever you're doing, make it fun.